two items today, Mayor. The first one is to recognize our Parks and Recreation Department for an award they received last week. The Texas Recreation and Parks Society awarded our Parks Department a gold medal award for excellence in recreation and parks management, and that deals with the implementation of parks management systems, strategies, and actions. And I think a good portion of the reason they were awarded this honor is because a couple of years ago the Parks Department completed a Parks Master Plan, and they have begun the implementation of that plan. And the Recreation and Parks Society recognizes the tremendous amount of work that has gone into that plan and the implementation of that plan. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have a department that the amenities of that department are where we want them to be. It means that given the resources we have a good plan, and we're working that plan, and we're moving towards doing the very best and the very most we can with the resources we have, and the society recognizes that. I think internally we recognize that there's still a lot of work to be done in operationalizing that plan and getting our facilities and our amenities where we want them to be. So, but I think it's a tremendous honor. I want to recognize the Parks and Recreation Department for having received this and being noticed by the rest of the Texas community for the great work they're doing. And with that, today's city performance report is by the Parks and Recreation Department. Mr. Michael Morris.
Good afternoon. Mike Morris, Director of Parks and Recreation. Let me start by saying we were very
Congratulations.
honored. Thank you. We were very honored last week, and I want to congratulate the employees of the Parks and Recreation Department. They've really undertaken, when you're said you're the best managed Parks and Recreation Department in the state of Texas, I mean, that's a big mouthful, and so we're very honored, and it's really a tribute to the employees of the department who've done a great job, so I'm very proud of them. So I'm going to share with you briefly, hopefully briefly, today, the performance measures that Parks and Recreation uses to try to measure our success, where we're going, and how to manage what we're doing. I'll start in the top right, our operational profile. That's just really a listing of the facilities that we manage. We have a vast array of types of facilities we manage: swimming pools, rec centers, senior centers, parks, different types of parks, athletic complexes versus nature parks, and just a variety of things that we do. So we're a very diverse department, and it just gives you a little background of what those things are that we manage. I'd like to spend a little more time in the baseline information and then our measures down below. As you see, the first item there in baseline information is number of parks adopted. When we underwent budget cuts back in 2010, we said we need to come up with a new way of getting help maintaining parks, and so we started the Adopt a Park program, and we're now up to 40 parks that some portion of the park has been adopted. So someone's either mowing, someone's picking up trash, someone's doing something in those 40 parks, and so the program's worked very well, and we're very appreciative of those folks who've stepped forward. The second item you see there is just a tally of the beach parking permits we've sold over the last 4 years. It steadily is increasing. We had a spike in 09, 010, that's when, right after the hurricane in Galveston, so we had a spike of people who came here instead of there, which that 125 was about a 20,000 increase that year. And then we've gone back, and previous to that, as you see, we were like 115,000. We've steadily increased, other than that one spike in 09 and 10. And then you see our employees, you see there the budget reductions that have happened in the Parks and Recreation Department over the last 4 years, as evidenced there by the expenditures. One of the items that our national association, our National Recreation and Parks Association, started an initiative about 3 years ago called ProRageous, and it is actually a performance measure benchmarking system for all Parks and Recreation departments across the country. And so we now have a database that we can go into and kind of compare ourselves. And so we've done that on, as you look at Parks and Recreation cost per capita We're at about $55 per person for population. The national average is about 76. And you can also do some data mining, which we did, and you look at either cities or counties across the country between 200,000 and 400,000, and their average is $96,000 or $96 per capita. So obviously we're doing with less resources, which is fine, but how do we make the most of those? And so that's what we're trying to do. As you see, then the next one is revenue from golf, and you could see that the revenue has increased since our new contract has gone in place, the revenue per round. So for every round of golf's played, we've increased, what is it, almost well, $8, a little over $8 per person that plays every round of golf. So they're buying food, they're buying, beverage, they're buying whatever, in addition to greens fee. One of the primary measures we look at is cost recovery. Obviously, we try to operate like a business. We are government. I mean, we have a social equity component to Parks and Recreation, so everything does not have a fee attached to it. And so there's some items that do. And so as you see here, our cost recovery is 25.7%. In other words, everything we spend, we bring in almost 26% back in revenue.
That's a good rate of return.
Actually, the national average is 26.2, and so we're right at the national average.
Could you, so we should not assume that everyone taking one step back on your revenue per round of golf. I think the population at large may need to know the distinction of the timing of when we outsourced Foresight Golf.
That happened in fiscal year 11. And so as you see there was a big jump from fiscal year 11 to 12. It went from 27 to 34. It's dipped a little bit, but we anticipate it'll be right back about 34 again this year.
So this was through the privatization efforts with Foresight Golf and
Correct.
Partnership, public-private with the city.
You're exactly right. Foresight Golf's done a great job at our golf courses. They've improved the quality of the course, and they also brought different means of generating revenue. They've enhanced the food and beverage component. They've enhanced the driving range, other areas that generate revenue. So they've done a great job.
Thank you.
So just moving down a little bit into our mission. Our primary mission has two elements to it. The first is to manage and maintain parks, beaches, open spaces, and recreational facilities. And our second component is to provide recreational, social, and cultural programs and activities. So those are essentially our two mission elements. So we have many measures we gather. In the Parks and Recreation industry, it's generally, key measures are attendance, expenditures, revenue, and then some quantitative or outcome measures such as customer satisfaction. So those are generally the four main measures in Parks and Recreation. Then we've taken those, once you gather those, and done some ratios and efficiency measures to kind of calculate how we're doing. So as the first one there you see is maintenance expenditures per acre of park. And so we're under what our target is, which is a good thing. Our target is relatively low, and that's based on our resources, obviously. And so that number it gives us on FISHY, that's the man hours, the cost of man hours of maintaining parks. So that's the cost associated with it per acre. And then next item is the cost of beach maintenance per mile. And if you compare that, for example, Port Aransas spends about $170,000 per mile. The county, I believe, spent a little more than that even last, we got new figures just about 9 months ago, so based on those figures. Some of the others, I won't touch all of them, but some of the others, you could see most of them are attendance numbers or their cost recovery numbers. One I would like to touch on, and we're going to touch on it even a little later, especially in our Latchkey after-school program. We have 36 elementary schools, and we have an after-school program from 3 to 6 every afternoon, Monday through Friday. And so our customer satisfaction rate right now is at almost 95%. Last year it was at 92, which is excellent. So we're very pleased with that. And similar, our senior center. Oh, I'm sorry, I said senior. I was going to seniors next. Latchkey is actually 93%, and we achieved 98.5 last year. And senior centers is 92 last year and currently 94.6. And we're going to do a presentation for you a little later in the meeting of a survey that was done by Texas A&M Corpus Christi on the Senior Center program. So I'll reserve the rest of that till then. So but anyway, this gives you a good overview of what we do and how we measure it, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You do a lot. Mr. Loeb.
Mike, I want to thank you for the presentation. I guess this is comments for you and for Mr. Olson. I ran for council because I felt like we needed to do a better job as a city on maintenance of everything that we had, streets, buildings, parks, and I've kind of been taking stock lately, and I've noticed that I've successfully gotten the maintenance budgets increased for every department that does operating except parks. So I'd love to take this opportunity in this upcoming budget to solve that problem. And so I would really like to request of you and the city manager that we get some very good information on if the council were to increase the maintenance budget on our parks and on our park facilities, what that would get us as a community. And I'd also like to get some information on how much it would cost to restore the hours at our swimming pools and other recreational venues that we cut back during the recession, because I think of the things that we cut back on, those are the things that we have not restored that I get the most calls about and the most comment about. So I appreciate your guys' work, but I'd really like to see some options for us on what we get if we pay a little more, because I think our parks are a reflection of our community, and I think more people would use them if they were nicer. So I'd like for us to see some options on how we do make them nicer for our citizens. Thanks.
Thank you, and actually the city manager has already requested us to provide him some information, which we're in the process of doing, of what this cost may be.
I may have warned him about this a little bit earlier.
Yes. So that is forthcoming, I guess is the way to say it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Loeb. And while you do that, could we also get the information on how much you have saved in consolidating our mowing contracts? There have been some initiatives that have been good business models in my mind, as far as how we consolidation and efficiencies and shared resources in as far as with our departments, and in any other areas that we have saved funds that are attributed to the planning, strategic planning with the parks would also be really helpful.
I'll touch on one real briefly. I mean, we did contract out some mowing, it's been almost 3 years ago now, and we spent the same amount of money, but we got better frequency, better quality, and so, and that kind of speaks to what David was talking about. Even though we're spending the same amount of money, we're getting more for that money. And so, but we are discussing right now more consolidation of mowing, and I think you'll be receiving more information on that in the near future.
Yeah, because not every year we're going to have a drought.
Right,
And
correct.
there's our cycles. Ms. McIntyre.
Thank you. Yes, when you look at the senior centers and you look at Latchkey, you get satisfaction and members served. And on our other components, like our parks, it's how much did we spend maintaining it? And it's a keep it less than. And unfortunately, if you go back to our cost recovery, it has decreased.
Correct.
Along with our budget. And so while we've saved a little bit, we've also lost more than that in revenue. And I think a lot of those cuts have hit that. And in our swimming programs, in our library usage, and in our parks, we can have a point where we can cut our way to poverty instead of going the other direction. And I think we really need to look at that. And not in maintenance, without a doubt, in the ability to mow the parks, to repair the swing sets and slides and exercise gear that is in our parks, but also in looking at how we're setting those up, like our Bond 2012 projects that we're putting into our parks, and making sure that some of those things are more easily and readily maintained, that we know that the climate in which those parks are in is not going to make it more difficult to take care of the elements that we're putting in there. But also, we should not have a day of the week in Corpus Christi that there is not a pool opened somewhere. And having our pools and our libraries all on similar schedules does a disservice to our many families that have different schedules. You have families who have days off on Sunday and families have days off on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. And so you could even configure the same number of dollars to provide a better service for a community in looking at that. But I'd really like to see some of it restored, but also some of it looked at a little bit more logistically minded, that our families can use it and perhaps help to increase our cost recovery at the same time by providing a better service. And it would be nice to see, and I know some of it's hard, you can't really gauge the satisfaction of people using our parks, but to look at our beach cleaning and our parks as how little do we spend, I do not necessarily believe that is the best benchmark of how well we are doing. I think looking at how great our parks are and our services are is a better tool.
You've touched on a good point. I wanted to bring that up, that it's really hard to measure quality of a park because it is perception. And so although the city does every 2 years approximately does a citizen survey of services, and so we'll get some indication there on park maintenance and beach maintenance, but really need a good method, because you really have to do a statistical survey to get good information on how well are you doing. Because you hear anecdotes here, there, of good and bad. So how are we really doing? And so finding something really definite is difficult.
Okay, and the mowing service, when they come through now that it's contracted, do they report back if they see playground gear? I know that some neighbors will complain about something's been broken for months, but they don't think about calling it in. Is there someone that is on site that will notice if equipment is broken and report it back to the parks department?
Actually, 2 years ago, we had started an inspection program. So we have a crew that does nothing but inspect parks every day of the week. So they're going from park to park, and they're doing inspections, written inspections that document, and then they send that to another group that will repair if there's a playground item, or depending on what it is.
So in water and gas, for example, we have one of the benchmarks is this timeliness of repairs done based on calls. It would be nice to have that here, since we know that the reports are coming in from us. It's generated by our inspections, to be able to see how quickly we get to those calls, so that we know that the gear that we do have out there is functional, and if not, that there's a good reason for it.
Sure.
Would be a nice thing to say.
Sure, we could do that. And ours is generally a safety issue if it's a playground, so the response is usually same day or next day, but we'll be glad to start. I don't think we have a good measure of that, but we'll begin to try to do something of that nature.
Thank you. Thanks for the report.
Mr. Scott?
Michael, I want to talk a minute about stuff you don't see in the numbers. Pride, commitment, passion. And I've talked to Michael about this. I've got an intimate relationship with the hike and bike trail at the end of Holly. And because we ride our bikes down there 4 or 5 days a week. And for a year, mudders, pickup trucks would work their way around through somebody's farmland, jump onto this concrete, hike and bike trail that we spend a lot of money on, go to the end, drop down in the Yoso, and just rip up that environment. And you all went out, some of your guys and girls, they went out and they put those bollards up, and then there was a war for 2 months. It was fascinating because
Unlike
you would put the bollards up, and then those trucks would come down and they'd remove 2. And then they'd go out and do their thing, and about 3 days later, the bollards would be back up. And it was fascinating to watch your crew come out, and you just got the sense that they weren't quitting, that at the end of the day, they were going to win that battle. And after about 2 months, nobody pulled any more bollards up. And there's no mudders riding up and down. There's no mud and debris. And I had an opportunity to walk down in there a couple weeks ago, and there may not have been 100, but there were close to it, people on a Sunday afternoon just walking and enjoying that hike and bike trail and enjoying their time out in Corpus Christi. And I thought they have an experience that is a good experience because your crew went out there on certain mornings for 2 months and thought, no, you may pull one out, we're putting 2 back in. And so that's the stuff that doesn't show up on your statistics. And I want to tell you that I, for one, have seen it. And you're right. You've got a great group of people. And whereas maybe years ago I would have seen where they come out, they put them up, somebody rip them up, so be it, I'll be back in a couple of years. Now, you and your crew are committed to the work you're doing, and you're committed to maintaining the work you're doing to the best of your abilities so that it is an experience of quality for Corpus Christians. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love that report. Thank you, Mr. Scott. And I have to say something about the Texas Amateur Games. This conversation cannot pass unless we acknowledge the incredible success that you all had with those games. I mean, you went over and beyond, and your staff and all of the partners, and the money that we added to our as far as our revenue source, the expanded tax base that we received, and the leadership on that board told me that they can hardly wait until they get to come back to Corpus Christi, because you all do it the best in the state. That's also another gold star for you. So, Stacy, coming as as we are your park fans, and to you, Mr. Morris, and to Reba, and all of you all, I just can't thank you all enough, for you just really make us proud. You work very hard.
Well, thank you. We're going after them again. So we hosted the state, the Recreation and Parks Society conference last week here in Corpus Christi, and part of the discussion is about who should bid on the games in 18 and 19. So we will be bidding on the games for 18 and 19. They're already slotted for the next 4 years, I guess it is. So we
How
will be
many
going after
people,
them again.
that is excellent. How many people did we import here
For the games?
for the games?
The games, there was approximately a little over 8,000 participants. So
20,000,
I
I
guess
was
it's
told.
20,000 with families and so forth that came with them.
Yeah, and it was a huge economic impact for
Yeah, a
us.
little over $7 million over the 4 days.
That's wonderful. And also, you did it with a smile on your face and great customer service, so thank you, very well organized. Mr. Loeb?
Thank you.
I was just going to say, the two metrics I can think about are, one, as Mark said, are people using the park? Because if they are, then that's easy. If they aren't, then it's what can we add to the park that will have people want to use it, or is there anything that can be added? And then the second is the standard of care of that park equivalent or greater than the properties around it? Because I think at the very least, we should provide a standard of care that doesn't make the neighborhood a less desirable place, but makes it a more desirable place. So, I mean, and those are two kind of subjective things that I know are hard to measure, but I think one of the downfalls of getting too much into statistical metrics is that you can lose sight of the overall goal, which is to have parks that people use. I think in the case of the police department, if we measured the police department's success and how many people they arrested, that would kind of miss the goal of a police department, which is to not have crime in the first place. So, I think what we all really want is we want a park system that our citizens want to use and do use. So, that's the best guidance I can give you on this, other than the metrics you've already got.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes, very well said. Okay, is there any other questions? Thank you. Thank you,
you.
Mr. Morris. Appreciate that.